This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thank you so much for joining us. It is Wednesday, September 2nd. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, a top Democratic political operative warns voter fraud is real. And he knows because he's been doing it on a large scale for decades. We're also going to explore the question, could there be interference in the presidential election by other countries? The president visiting Kenosha, Wisconsin, getting a first-hand look at the damage done from the violence during the protests. And Lecrae's new album is called Restoration. We're going to talk to the Grammy Award-winning artist to find out why it's more than just a title. And don't forget us, that is the plea to Americans from mayors of Lake Charles, Louisiana, after Hurricane Laura devastated his city. All those stories and more are ahead in this edition of CBN NewsWatch. I want to begin this half hour with big concerns over voter fraud, although Democrats and many in the media dismiss the possibility. One top Democratic operative told the New York Post voter fraud is real, especially with mail-in ballots. And he said he knows it's true because he's been doing it for decades on a major scale. New York struggled with mail-in voting already this summer in the presidential primary, when more than 10 times the usual number of mail-in ballots were used. And the number in the presidential election will be much higher. The Democratic political operative told the Post there are multiple ways to carry out voter fraud with mail-in ballots, and he warned there will be a war in November over this stuff. U.S. officials say there has been no intelligence to suggest foreign countries are working to undermine mail-in voting. But other top officials have warned other countries could find ways to interfere in the November election. Our Gary Lane is covering that part of the story.
Attorney General William Barr first floated the idea about foreign election interference in a New York Times interview last June, saying it is a worrisome issue. Barr said, quote, "There are a number of foreign countries that could easily make counterfeit ballots, put names on them, send them in, and it would be very hard to sort out what's happening." President Trump raised similar concerns about Chinese and Russian mail-in ballot interference.
Who knows who's getting them? The mailmen are going to get them, and people are going to just grab batches of them. And you talk about China and Russia, they'll be grabbing plenty of them. It's a disaster. It's a rigged election waiting to happen.
Trump administration critics say foreign ballot tampering is highly unlikely because specific codes are used to identify ballots, and ballot designs vary from state to state. That makes counterfeiting on a massive scale extremely difficult, if not impossible. Other methods of election meddling are more likely. Utah Senator Mitt Romney is concerned about domestic and foreign electronic vote hacking.
There have been efforts to do so in the past. If that were successful, we would really have no way in some states to know what the right number was.
China may pose the greatest threat. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence announced China does not want President Trump reelected, and Beijing has been, quote, expanding its influence efforts ahead of November 2020 to shape the policy environment. China expert Gordon Chang says China could easily tamper with the election because much is currently done online.
But what I focus on is what China has been doing to manipulate opinion. So, for instance, there have been these malicious disinformation campaigns about the coronavirus and about the George Floyd protests. But also China has got its troll farms operating. So we've got all of these fake accounts.
In June, Twitter took down 174,000 fake Chinese accounts. Other social media platforms have done the same. So perhaps the easiest way for China or anyone else to sway the November election may come through propaganda and disinformation. That could pose the biggest threat to an uninformed American electorate, now relying on social media as its main source of information. Gary Lane, CBN News.
President Trump made a trip to Kenosha, Wisconsin Tuesday to tour the damage caused by violent protests. And the Department of Justice will investigate the funding behind the protests that have often led to riots and looting. Our Charlene Aaron is following this story.
A backdrop of burned out buildings and destruction greeted the president as he toured Kenosha over the objections of some state and local leaders. Violent protests erupted in the city after police shot Jacob Blake, a black man, 7 times in the back last month. The president says police are sometimes under tremendous pressure and criticized calls to defund them.
We have to condemn the dangerous anti-police rhetoric. It's getting more and more. It's very unfair. You have some bad apples, we all know that, and those will be taken care of through the system.
When asked about systemic racism in policing, the president said the real problem is the rioters.
Well, you just keep getting back to the opposite subject. We should talk about the kind of violence that we've seen in Portland and here and other places. It's tremendous violence.
In the battleground state of Wisconsin, where current polls show the president trailing Joe Biden, the president promised federal resources for police and small businesses to help the city rebuild.
We will provide $1 million to the Kenosha law enforcement so that you have some extra money to go out and do what you have to do. I'm also providing nearly $4 million to support these small businesses that I talked about today that got burned up, burned down. And we're going to be providing over $42 million to support public safety statewide, including direct support for law enforcement and funding for additional prosecutors to punish criminals and resources to provide services to victims of crime.
As violent protests continue, the Department of Justice is looking into who's funding the rioting happening in cities across the country. DHS Secretary Chad Wolf says people are being flown from city to city to take part in the violence.
We had about 175 arrests in Kenosha. Almost 100 of them were from out of state. So we know they're moving around. We've seen them in D.C., in Sacramento, and elsewhere. They're organized. We've seen similar tactics being used from Portland and other cities across the country as well.
Wolf says the Department of Homeland Security will assist in the probe. Meanwhile, according to Oregon Live, in Portland, where nightly violent protests are approaching 100 days in a row, the city's mayor is moving after protests outside his residence. Ted Wheeler, who is also the city's police commissioner, has been criticized for failing to control months of violent protests in his city. He now says it's best that he find a new place to live after protesters set fires and broke windows at his condo building. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is taking some heat today after she visited a hair salon in San Francisco Monday afternoon, even though the city's coronavirus guidelines have kept salons closed. Pelosi was caught on camera in security footage that was obtained by Fox News, and she was not wearing a mask. The salon's owner told Fox News she considered Pelosi's action a double standard, calling it, quote, a slap in the face, because Pelosi felt like she could go to the salon while other people cannot, and the salon owner can't work. A Pelosi spokesperson said the speaker complies with local COVID requirements and followed the salon's requirements, but the owner disagreed, saying the speaker got her hair blow-dried, which isn't supposed to be done under current guidelines. Republicans quickly accused Pelosi of hypocrisy, saying she is pushing policy to keep the economy closed and small businesses shut down, but can visit a salon herself. And the Trump campaign called her No Mask Nancy. Coming up, the brutal attacks against Christians in India, where beatings, arrests, the destruction of churches, and even deaths are now occurring regularly. We're going to explain why this is happening now when we come back.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
From Washington, D.C., uncompromising stories, interviews, and analysis from veteran journalists David Brody.
Escalating fight.
Jenna Browder.
Chose his words carefully.
Ben Kennedy.
Plan to join him.
And Amber Strong.
For impeachment grows a little bit louder.
Bringing you the political news that matters.
We get out and tell the story of the progress that we're making in this country.
Watch Faith Nation, weeknights at 6 on the CBN News Channel.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is, this is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
A mob drags a pastor from his home, then beats him brutally and slits his throat. That monstrous murder is just one example of the horrific violence now happening in India. So why has that country become one of the most dangerous places in the world to be a Christian? George Thomas explains.
A new report by a human rights group claims that despite a 4-month coronavirus lockdown, Christians in India are facing an uptick in religiously motivated persecution. According to Persecution Relief, these 4 states are now the most dangerous places for Christians, where beatings, arrests, church destruction, and at times death are regular occurrences.
The police will be called, and at times the Christian will be arrested and accused of creating communal disharmony, accused of causing problems by being a Christian.
Among those brutally killed, 27-year-old Kandi Mudu, who converted from Hinduism to Christianity 4 years ago.
Among the first people he led to Christ were his 3 brothers. That started the pressure in his village.
On June 7th, half a dozen radical Hindu men armed with sharp weapons and homemade guns dragged Mudu out of his home, severely beat him, then slit his throat.
And even when the Hindu mob came to get him, and knowing that his life could be about to end, the last thing he said to his wife as he was led away was, "Honey, I want you to stay strong in your faith. Even if they kill me, you remain firm in your faith in Christ."
Persecution Relief says Mudu's case was among 293 incidents of anti-Christian persecution in just the first 6 months of this year, a 40% jump compared to the same time last year.
Seeing the ways in which attacks on those communities have continued has been part of the reason why we see the concern raised by Open Doors and by many across the world in terms of what's happening for religious freedom in India.
Over the past 7 years, India has gone from number 31 to number 10 on Open Doors' World Watch list of the most dangerous places in the world to be a Christian. The majority of attacks happening under the Hindu-led BJP government of Narendra Modi. Modi's party is accused of trying to turn India into a Hindu nation.
As Prime Minister Modi was re-elected last year, he promised to make India more Hindu. They believe that India is a Hindu nation. Literally, the soil is Hindu soil, and if you want to live there, you should be a Hindu.
India's constitution guarantees religious freedom, yet the government is pushing a national law that would ban religious conversions.
Basically, laws that say you cannot change your religion. If you want to change your religion, you need to appear before a magistrate. You need to explain why you're doing that. And that gives the government opportunities to fight against that conversion and to try to talk you out of changing your faith.
So far, 8 of India's 29 states have passed anti-conversion laws. And it's not just Christians. Muslims are also coming under pressure.
We see a number of efforts that have been undertaken that particularly target Muslims, including last year, the passage of a Citizenship Amendment Act, which made it a lot easier for everyone other than Muslims to try and obtain a path to citizenship.
Then in early August, Hindus across the country celebrated as Prime Minister Modi broke ground on a long-awaited Hindu temple to their revered god Ram at the site of a demolished 16th century mosque. In 1992, Hindu radicals destroyed the mosque, sparking massive Hindu-Muslim violence. For more than 7 decades, India has been held together by its secular constitution, rich culture, and pluralistic values. Now, human rights groups say all that is under threat as Modi and his political party pursue an aggressive and deadly agenda of trying to turn India into a Hindu nation, something a ranking BJP leader once said would happen by December 31st, 2021, when all of India would be free of Christians and Muslims, either by conversion or they'd be forced out of the country. George Thomas, CBN News.
Still ahead, he is riding the top of the Billboard charts with his new album, but there's an even bigger story behind the music. Grammy Award-winning artist and best-selling author, entrepreneur, and social activist Lecrae is joining us with a message of restoration for himself and his most vulnerable fans. Stay with us.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Lecrae is a Grammy Award-winning recording artist with a new album at the top of the Billboard charts. It's called Restoration, and that's more than just a title. It's actually a movement Lecrae is leading to reach his most vulnerable audience, the poor, the forgotten, and those who are struggling with everyday life. Lecrae even released this music to prisoners before releasing it to anyone else. He paid a visit to Studio 5 to share the story behind the music.
I'm drowning. This is probably the healthiest and most emotionally, mentally, spiritually healthy I have been in creating music.
If I had one call, would you resurrect? Or would you take back all of your promises? 'Cause I don't know who to turn to or who to trust.
I've written music when I was insecure and I wanted people to think I was awesome. I've written music when I was feeling bland, but I felt like I had to be religious and write some kind of spiritual song because that's what people wanted from me. You know, I've made music when I was just in total disarray and broken and I didn't have anything to say that was positive or hopeful. And this is the first time I have clarity. I have just a clear vantage point of who I am and what I want people to get from this. So I made music as therapy for myself, and now it's not mine anymore. It belongs to the people.
Let me go. I've been going through so much, I swear these people at my throat. That's on me, that's on mamas.
How important is it to drive home this message that if you're breathing, restoration's still possible?
Oh my goodness. Hope is what is the fuel for any fire that needs to be, kept ablaze. For me, hope is what kept me moving and going when I was at my lowest. So the hope of restoration when you are struggling with mental illness, the hope of restoration when you are incarcerated, the hope of restoration when you are, sick, or you have a family member who's on there, in the hospital, is what you're clinging to. And I think that so often we don't get that message driven home to us, that it is possible, that your circumstance is not too far gone. I think we're in this cancel culture. We're in a culture where, we're ready to throw people away and throw things away. And I'm saying God doesn't throw us away. He actually wants to restore us. So I thought it was very important for me to exemplify that and to create, art that reflects it.
You share, at least in 3 YouTube videos, part of this journey. I hope there's more to come.
Hi, my name is Lecrae Moore, and 14 years old. I'm in the 8th grade. This is a video about my dreams.
As you're sharing your music and your story, I think many people will be surprised. And I think the date that you give, November 1st, 2018, you woke up in a clinical depression?
I was overwhelmed and stressed out and just dealing with so many issues, marital issues, work issues, identity issues, and a lot of the things that I had dealt with in my childhood traumas were coming up, and I wasn't able to navigate them well.
I mean, I was on an incredible tour. We put out a single that was skyrocketing. Tons of great things were happening around me, but my soul was not resting. It was stress, and it was unresolved traumas, and it all just came to a head. And I literally was like, what the heck is this? What is happening? Caught me completely by surprise.
How do we begin the journey to creating again and connecting with your wife again and connecting with your children? How do you begin that when that happens?
I actually look at it as a blessing, because if God creates a limp in my stride in order to get me to remember his goodness, or in order to get me to slow down and appreciate what I have in order to get my attention, then far be it from me to try to run without a limp. You know what I mean? Yeah. So what that did for me was it slowed me down. It made me have to investigate my heart, my mind, what's going on. And to hear a counselor say, oh, that's clinical depression, I'm like, well, what do you mean? What's happening? And it was like, oh, you got so much unresolved issues going on, as we start unpacking my life. And so imagine your life is a bookshelf, and there are just books sitting kind of jutting out. Well, I had to go back and push those books in, on the shelf, to have a clear shelf in order to have reconnection with my wife, in order to be creative again. It's like, oh, that daddy book, we got to push that in. That insecurity book, we got to push that in. All the traumas, we got to push those in. And so that's a lifelong journey, but that was the road to restoration.
The road to restoration, indeed. We have more on the way from Lecrae in the coming weeks, including his second book, I Am Restored, How I Lost My Religion But Found My Faith. It's a follow-up to his New York Times bestseller, Unashamed. In the meantime, we hope you will join us tonight for a special edition of Studio 5. We're dedicating the entire half hour to the life and legacy of actor and activist Chadwick Boseman, King T'Challa in Black Panther. You can catch Studio 5, that special, this evening on the CBN News Channel. It begins at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. Coming up, after Hurricane Laura devastated parts of Louisiana, the mayor of Lake Charles is asking Americans not to forget the city. And CBN's Operation Blessing is on the scene to answer the call to help people to recover from the damage. We've got the story for you when we come back.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel. Now available at cbnradio.com.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torresadillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
Prophecy thousands of years old.
We were called to be a light to the world.
Being fulfilled today. Discover how. Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life. Just call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is. This is what I'm doing.
See how the people of Israel are fulfilling prophecy.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
By sharing their knowledge.
In Africa, in Asia, in South America, in East Europe.
And their love.
This is how we work. This is us.
Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
After Hurricane Laura devastated parts of Louisiana, the mayor of Lake Charles is pleading with Americans not to forget what happened to his city, saying we absolutely need our American brothers and sisters to realize a great American city had a major blow. People in Louisiana have been facing crucial shortages of basic supplies following the hurricane. Thousands of linemen from 29 states have worked to restore power. Hundreds of thousands have been without air conditioning on some of the hottest days of the year, while tens of thousands have had no water. Cars were backed up for miles as the U.S. military hands out ice, water meals, and tarps. This man you're seeing was trapped in his home for days, hoping for any help he can get.
We lost the roof to our house. We've been trapped in our house for 4 days. My brother-in-law came and cut us out with a chainsaw yesterday.
CBN's Operation Blessing has trucks on the scene in Lake Charles, bringing power, tools, and equipment to clear out homes and to cut down trees and remove debris. Ready to sign up volunteers to help those victims. You can find out how to help by going to Operation Blessing's website. That is ob.org. Time now for your Wednesday word, and today's word is comfort. There is only one answer to the question, what can mend a broken heart? It is the God of all comfort. If you've ever had your heart broken or you're suffering through a broken heart in this very moment, know this: God is nearest to those who are suffering that pain. Allow him to comfort you today and every day. With that word, make this a wonderful Wednesday and a wonderful rest of the week. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Thank you so much for watching. You can find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel at any time. You can also find them at cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen today. Email us at that address right there on your screen, newswatch@cbn.com. And of course, you can reach out and touch us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'll see you right back here, same time tomorrow.